They don't miss us. Well, there were like 4 people who missed us.
Yeah.
Maybe 6. 7. Let's push it. I'm Chaz Licciardello.
And I'm Dr. David Smith.
That's right. And we're going to talk your ear off because we've got 2 weeks to catch up on. We're not going to catch up on it.
No, we're not even going to try.
But just quickly, let's get right off the bat. Do you have anything to add whatsoever about the convention season, Republican convention, anything? We missed all of that.
It was really striking how the main message of the convention was everything flows from Mr. Trump's benevolence.
Yeah.
That everything from the fact that most of it was hosted in or around the White House, the ridiculous and potentially criminal citizenship ceremony that took place, which, among other things, is Chad Wolf even allowed to conduct given that he's not allowed to hold the post?
They might not be legal citizens now.
Yeah.
Because of him.
And another very striking moment was when he had the freed hostages and was telling this hostage who'd been imprisoned by the Erdogan regime in Turkey, this American pastor. This was a real celebrity case in the US. Trump was like, well, Erdogan was very good to me. And the whole message was, well, you only got in prison because you don't have this good relationship with Erdogan like I've got. And the way you get out of prison is by having the kind of relationship that I have. By the way, that whole hostage rescue thing, total dog whistle to QAnon.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Absolute dog whistle to QAnon. Yeah. We can't talk directly about all those imprisoned children that Mr. Trump is rescuing from bondage. But look, here are some hostages that Mr. Trump rescued.
They talked openly about sex trafficking and human trafficking.
That was another, not exactly a dog whistle. That was more in the train whistle category.
Yeah, me and John were watching. We just went, oh no!
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, look, for me, there were a couple of things that stood out very briefly. I know we can't spend forever on it. The first thing is just an interesting, like Trump does threats, right? That's he's big on threats and scares. But for me, it was interesting that the difference between 2016 and 2020 was that the threat was from the outside.
Yes.
It was immigrants. It was Muslims. It was, they're coming to get you from the outside.
Yes.
This time the threat was from the inside.
Yes.
It's traitors and anarchists
Yes.
and liberals.
Yes.
And that just and I don't know if that is quite as scary because people know the people on the inside. Like people know that there aren't anarchists next door.
Yes.
You can tell people that immigrants have horns.
Yeah.
They don't know they don't know any better.
Yeah.
But they do know better who's next door in the suburbs.
Yes.
So I don't know. That was an interesting decision from them. A couple of other little asides. They only mentioned Obamacare once at the Republican convention, which that says a lot, I feel.
It does, yes.
Like in 2012, they mentioned it 23 times.
Yep.
In 2016, they mentioned it 13 times. Meanwhile, at the Democrat convention, in 2012, they mentioned the Affordable Care Act twice. In 2016, they mentioned it 6 times. And this time, they mentioned it 7 times. So... Surprise, surprise, Obamacare's gone from minus 11 to plus 16.
To be fair, I don't go around constantly talking about my greatest failures either.
That's true. Another little thing, I mentioned this on the show, but just in case you don't watch our show.
Like me.
Yeah, like me, actually. It was a record, a massive record for the number of times that a presidential acceptance speech mentioned your opposition. 41 times Trump mentioned Biden's name. The previous record was 1992, George H.W. Bush, 8. So that's a little bit of a record.
Biden didn't actually mention Trump's name.
No, he didn't. Well, they normally don't. The third most mentions of your opponent's name was 2. So you kind of smashed the record.
Everything in the Democratic convention was compacted, but even in a live acceptance speech, is it normal to go for as long as good old Castro on the Potomac went for?
Not usually. Look.
By the way, that's why we didn't do the show last week.
It's true.
We're on quite a tight timetable, and Trump just blew it.
Pushed us over. And also had an interview afterwards, but it was because he was so long.
Yes.
Clinton probably did an hour 10.
Probably. There was something a bit Bill Clinton-esque.
But usually no. The other thing I'd say they didn't mention much, the stock market. What happened to the stock market? Remember how the stock market was the measure of the economy that we all love?
Well, he was talking it up again this week.
Yeah, but he didn't mention it during the convention. Obviously, the poll guys have said, it's really not playing
Yeah.
well.
And then he just went back to talking about it.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. But I just want to touch on a couple of things there before we go into the
Yes.
segue into what we really want to talk about, which is what this week has been all about,
Yes.
which was the Law and Order campaign. It was a little baby before the convention, but it grew up to be a big, hairy man during the convention, and it's kicked on since then. So let's get into Law and Order. I'll just say one thing before I let you go and just go nuts about Kenosha and Law and Order and all the rest of it. And that is that a lot of people talking about defining your opposition. And they were comparing Trump trying to define Joe Biden as soft on riots in the same way as Romney was defined by Obama as the guy who sacked you. Kerry was defined as Mr. Cheese-eating terrorist surrenderer, etc. But there are some massive differences, and I'll just flag them very quickly. Number one, Romney and Kerry were defined months earlier, like 6 months earlier than Trump is trying now. He's trying it very, very late in the game, and he's been flitting all over the place.
Yes.
And I expect he'll continue to flit all over the place. Secondly, far left for Joe Biden doesn't fit at all.
No.
Like Joe Biden's response this week where he said, "Look at me."
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's all he need to say.
Do I look like a tool of the far left?
Yeah, it just doesn't work. It's obviously not true. He has opposed the riots, and he's going to continue to do it increasingly loudly because he's very comfortable opposing riots.
He really is.
And so, violent crime is not like terrorism. It's not like the GFC.
No.
It's not a big issue. It's a 4% issue. So that's a lot to pin your mast to. And finally, Trump doesn't score well on these issues either.
No,
I'm about to give you some polls later on where people don't feel safe with Trump.
No.
In fact, they feel safe with Biden. So he's kind of leading with a weakness there. So
Safer with Biden.
Yeah, so I feel like it's a bit ill-fated, but
I did see one of his campaign managers say today, Biden has been defined as a tool of the far left. It's like, it's not up to you to say, that's up to the people to decide whether he's been defined as that. That's you telling Mr. Trump that you've done a good job.
Yes.
Anyway, okay, so we have reached a very worrying, I would even say frightening stage of the campaign, which is the armed street violence stage.
That is.
And, really would have hoped that we wouldn't get there, but this is where we are. So it's important to note, first of all, there have actually been right-wing attacks on protesters going on almost since the beginning of the George Floyd protests. A lot of the times that taking the form of cars ramming people, which is really worrying because that clearly takes inspiration from someone who actually murdered Heather Heyer with a car back in Charlottesville in 2017. But that's become a accepted part of the repertoire of pro-Trump militias that are turning up to these rallies. And certainly with the Portland caravan, which we'll get to in a second, the intention of going along in those vehicles which have been getting steadily more dangerous to pedestrians for the last 20 years, the aim is to intimidate. The aim is to run people down or to threaten to run people down. So, and this has actually been going on for a while. And famously, the only law enforcement officer who's been killed in the riots was killed by a right-wing militia. He was killed by a Boogaloo boy.
If you don't count David Dorn. Like, who wasn't, who's retired. But
yes. Yeah. So, and by the way, just saw a very interesting statistic. That is 93% of the thousands of protests that have taken place since George Floyd's death were entirely peaceful, as in without a single violent incident. But anyway, so in Kenosha, this is where it really started to escalate. Kenosha is another example of where it's a few blocks in Kenosha that have been the battleground between protesters and police.
Which is the same as Portland.
Absolutely the same as
there's
Portland.
6 blocks.
Yeah. And there's been some very dramatic footage. Partly because these protesters know how to create visual effects. So a corrections office on fire with the words "Are you listening yet?" scrawled on it. Like that's an incredibly effective visual image for the protesters. But of course, in the country that Trump is really president of, which is the country of Facebook, if you live entirely in Facebook land, you are just constantly seeing, like, American cities are on fire. The whole of Portland is in flames. The whole of Kenosha, this city that you never heard of before yesterday, is on fire. And so what's happened is Facebook had pages where people were organising militia activities. This was flagged to Facebook. The militia page that Kyle Rittenhouse was recruited through, they'd had 750 complaints to Facebook.
Wow.
They didn't take it down. And Facebook has actually, Facebook's been used to organise genocides before in Myanmar. So this is something they should be paying attention to. And Zuckerberg's doing his usual thing about, this somehow, slipped past our extremely rigorous processes.
Here's $300 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so first of all, Facebook is absolutely up to its neck in what happened. So Kyle Rittenhouse, he lives about 20 miles from the protests in Antioch, Illinois. For those of you not familiar with the geography, so Milwaukee in Wisconsin and Chicago in northern Illinois, there's sort of like this continuous suburban area between them. And both Antioch and Kenosha are in this sort of ambiguous, not quite Chicago, not quite Milwaukee suburban continuum. Anyway, so he goes 20 miles across state lines with a semi-automatic rifle. When
apparently he got it in Wisconsin.
He got it in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
rather than taking it.
Because that would be breaking the law. Although he was already breaking the law.
He was breaking the law
because he's
17 years old, although his lawyer is apparently going to argue that he's a member of a well-regulated militia.
And he was violating curfew.
Yeah.
Try that. Try to get out of that lawyer.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
A militia well-regulated by Facebook. Anyway, so there's footage. I mean, one of the interesting things about this incident is basically all of the footage comes from supporters of Rittenhouse. And even that footage doesn't look good. Like, there are militia people there basically chatting with the cops, being offered water by the cops saying, "We're glad you're here." Because
really appreciate you.
Yeah, because it's an anti-police protest, so the police will essentially take the side of anyone who turns up to confront the protesters. And Rittenhouse is just running around with this semi-automatic rifle. And he had a confrontation with a protester that was not caught on video, but an autopsy today confirmed that the protester was shot in the back. So this is not...
This is one that hasn't been filmed.
This is the one that wasn't captured on video. Right, the one that was captured on video was what happened next.
Yeah, so is the theory that the reason that guy, that Rosenstein guy, whatever, was chasing after him was because of that?
The reason why he got chased down by those protesters, one of whom started beating him with a skateboard.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the first shooting.
No, the first shooting, we don't know what happened. There was some sort of confrontation, but as I say, medical evidence today confirms that the first victim was shot in the back, right? He wasn't... so he seems to have been retreating from Rittenhouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I thought he was shot like several times.
He was shot several times.
Yeah. So, but was the first... Do we know whether the first shot's the one in the back or...
Don't know.
Or, because he may have been shot... Because it looked on the video, because I've seen the video.
Yeah.
It looked on the video like he was charging at him. Who knew what he was going to do? But it looked like he was charging at him, and then he got shot like 1,000,000 times. So maybe in that process, he started to turn around to go away, which you would if you were being shot at 1,000,000 times. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. Anyway, so then, yes, he's pursued by these other protesters trying to disarm him, whacking him with a skateboard. He shoots two of them. One of them dies, and then remarkably, he tries to surrender to the police.
Yes.
The police ignore him.
Yes. So then he just goes home.
The police, go after the protesters. He goes home. There are just so many things wrong with this. 17-year-old carrying a semi-automatic rifle around. Yeah. Obviously the fact that he shot and killed people. The police basically letting this happen. The police ignoring him as he tried to surrender. this is a very worrying stage that we've reached, which of course is then made more worrying by the fact that Rittenhouse immediately becomes a right-wing hero.
Yeah, I was just going to, one of the clips I was going to play you, I might as well play it now, is, to me, this is one of the most disturbing elements of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is he's now being treated like a celebrity. There are T-shirts of him like American hero with his picture on. Look at this message of him responding, sending out messages to his adoring fans.
I just want to thank every single one of you from the bottom of my heart for the underlining support. It's just amazing. I want to thank all of you for the mail I've been receiving. It's been really helpful. Just want to let you all know that I'm going to be out of here soon, and stay strong, and I hope to see you guys soon.
He literally said, "What's your message for your fans?"
Yeah.
And they sound like Justin Bieber. Like, it's just, that to me is extremely disturbing.
It's highly disturbing.
Because that's gonna encourage more. That's gonna encourage much more.
Yeah. And then, of course, Trump weighs in saying, oh, well, you saw the same footage I did, which was the second shooting, and claiming he was acting in self-defense after he had already shot someone. By the way, there was also this immediate thing that sprang up, that the first victim threw a Molotov cocktail at him.
Yeah, well, it was a plastic bag.
It was a plastic
It's clearly a plastic bag. Yeah. And that guy was an angry guy, by the way. Like, like there's plenty of footage of him at other times of that night.
Yeah, yeah.
Just strutting around, looking angry. Not that I'm suggesting he deserved to be shot, but I'm just saying that go on.
But police should not have been letting teenagers wander around with semi-automatic rifles.
No, of course not.
And it was also clear Rittenhouse was really out of his depth. Like, he looked scared. He didn't know what he was doing. It was almost certainly an act of panic.
In the criminal complaint against him, they quoted McGuinness, who was the Daily Caller reporter, who was basically standing next to him at the time he shot the first shooting.
Yes.
And he said he had no idea, this guy clearly had no idea how to handle his gun.
Yeah. And basically all of this leads to the fact that the key variable in how violent something gets is what the police do. Are they actually trying to de-escalate? Are they actually behaving sensibly? How, what's their reaction like? And how are they treating people wandering around with rifles?
Yeah.
At this thing. Anyway, so then we go from that to Portland, where,
No, it's just before we go to Portland, can I just talk about the legals with Rittenhouse for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Just because it's actually, it's relevant, and that is that what he's been actually charged with, he's been charged with reckless homicide for the first guy. That was Rosenbaum, his name was.
Yes.
Recklessly endangering safety of the reporter, McGuinness, who was staying next to him, and he thought he was shot in the leg. Intentional homicide for skateboard guy, and attempted homicide for arm guy, the guy whose arm he blew off, and recklessly endangering safety for someone else. Now, the reason I bring this up is because he's claiming self-defense. But to get self-defense, he needs to... Well, first start, he was unlawfully carrying an AR-15 at the age of 17. We've already established this, and violating curfew. Wisconsin law says this: a person who engages in unlawful conduct of a type likely to provoke others to attack him or her and thereby does provoke an attack is not entitled to claim the privilege of self-defense. As in, if you're breaking the law, which he was, in a way that would provoke someone to threaten you, which he was, you can't claim self-defense except when you reasonably believe that he or she is in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm. So, in the case of the skateboard guy, was he about to create great bodily harm for Rittenhouse? But they can't resort to the use of force intended or likely to cause death to the person assailant unless they reasonably believe they've exhausted every other reasonable means to escape from or otherwise avoid death or great bodily harm. So, did the skateboard guy give him no other option but to shoot him to avoid great bodily harm? I would suggest there were other options than shooting skateboard guy in the heart.
Yes.
Given that skateboard guy was clearly trying to disarm an apparent shooter.
Yes.
And the person I want to bring up now, because this is where we're going to be going very soon, I'm sure, is Trump, who famously a year ago claimed that when confronted with a school shooter, he would run up and tackle the guy because that's the kind of hero Trump is. Now, that's exactly what Skateboard Guy tried to do.
Yeah.
And he got shot in the heart. And Trump is now saying it looks to him like it was self-defense. What else could he do? And that is one of the many things that bothers me about this whole scenario. It's just turning everything upside down, where the shooter is becoming the hero and the people trying to disarm the shooter become deserving of death.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, now go on.
And the victim as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always about who the real victim is. Yeah.
Okay, so go to Portland.
Anyway, so in Portland, we have this caravan of jerks who, by the way, the great thing about, parades of $80,000 trucks and parades of very noisy and expensive watercraft.
What's the great thing about them?
It's reminding people that these supporters are not just assholes, they're wealthy assholes.
You're so wrong, Dave. They are great patriots.
Yeah.
I'm sure I read that on Twitter.
Anyway, well, because Trump said they're great patriots.
Yes, right.
Now, so Trump is basically encouraging militia activity at this point. He's saying that the law and order threat from the left is so bad that, these militias need to go in. Do you think that's most people's idea of what law and order is? I mean, if you look at how this sort of looks in the long term, it's like these protests in Portland have been going on for 90 days. Trump sent in the dregs of federal law enforcement to deal with it. They just made it worse. It just inflamed everything. So they withdrew. Then things settled down a bit, but they're still going on. And it's like, and now, so the fucking truck militias go in and get killed. Like, I don't think that this is what most people envisage with law and order. But anyway, so they go in. The plan was supposedly that they would just drive around the highways of Portland, making asses of themselves in a way that they would no doubt find very impressive. But, of course, they go to downtown Portland where protests are happening with bear mace and paintball guns. And, they start intimidating people, acting like they're going to run people, to actually colliding with people in some cases.
Spraying them with mace.
Spraying them with
pepper spray,
mace. And
pepper spray cannons.
Yes.
Like, that was serious pepper spray.
And one of them gets killed. Now, one of the interesting things about this incident that I find something alarming about this. So I don't know if you saw this afternoon, the guy who was the suspect, the homicide suspect, was killed by police in Seattle as they tried to apprehend him.
Just now?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
A few hours ago. So his name is Michael Forrest.
This is 100% Antifa guy.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Michael Forrest Reinhold. Okay. He was 48 years old. The guy he shot was 39 years old. So these aren't just hot-headed kids.
No.
These are, and Reinhold seems to have been a sort of Antifa veteran.
Yeah.
The guy he shot was a Patriot Prayer militia guy. This wasn't just the spur of the moment Facebook militia organised thing. This is actually two groups who are used to confrontation.
They've been doing it in Portland for years.
Exactly, yes. That's a very important contextual thing, is that militias have been coming in and making jerks of themselves around Portland because they just love intimidating the Liberals. Because they see Oregon as this naturally sort of red state and Portland as this enclave of freaks that is distorting the politics. So this has been going on for years. That's the context. So the guy who was shot was out of his vehicle. It's not clear what happened. Reinhold gave an interview with Vice News. What I would have to say is an extremely ill-advised interview. He said, "Oh yeah, my lawyers told me not to talk to them. We've got to tell them what was happening." And he said he thought he was going to be stabbed because the guy was pulling something out of his tool belt. The guy who was with the guy who got shot said, "No, we were just targeted because we were wearing Patriot Prayer insignia." Whatever the case, it's a bad scene.
Yeah.
The guy was not following what is supposed to be Antifa practice, which is when you shoot someone, you're then supposed to get rid of the gun, like put the gun away, help them, like show that you're no longer a threat. He just kind of ran off. Yeah. He said, "Oh yeah, I thought I missed the guy who was lying in the street. But some other disturbing things. First person on the scene was a Black Lives Matter medic. The police shoved her away, scattered her medical equipment, and then basically just knelt over the guy while he bled to death. So it's just a bad, bad scene.
I am going to talk a little bit more about the general scene in a second, but I want to just take a quick detour to Trump.
Yes.
On this issue, because I know you're getting to him, and I don't want everything about Trump.
Yeah.
Because this is a lot bigger than Trump, to be honest.
Yes.
But in this one area, because we've talked about the paintballs a lot and the pepper spray and all the rest. And there are two things that I've been very annoyed to sound like that's like a nurse. I've been very pissed off at Trump about with this. First of all, it's one thing to I get he's playing for his team and all the rest of it, but it is when you're talking about people firing paintballs at other people who don't have eye protection, obviously, right? That's very dangerous.
That is very dangerous.
It's you might as well get hit with a baseball bat. Yeah. Okay, I've gotten welts with the best of them. My paintballs, they bloody.
Why does it not surprise me that you're a paintball guy?
Of course I am.
Yeah.
But this is how Trump reacted when this was brought up to him.
I understand they had large numbers of people that were supporters, but that was a peaceful protest. And paint is a defensive mechanism. Paint is not bullets. Your supporters, and they are your supporters indeed, shot a young gentleman who and killed him, not with paint, but with a bullet. And I think it's disgraceful. These people, they protested peacefully. They went in very peacefully.
So they're firing paintballs at people with paintball guns and tear spray cannons.
And
pepper spray cannons.
Ramming cars into people.
Yeah, and he's saying that they're protesting peacefully.
They are. Yeah, another thing that he said was saying they're your supporters.
Yeah,
so I mean, this is the classic fascist division, friend, enemy. Everyone who is not us is the left, and it's open season on them.
And it's okay to be. It's not okay, but if you want to be Mr. Law and Order, that's fine. Be Mr. Law. It's a legitimate tactic to try in an election, but you can't just decide to be law and order for your people and everyone else can go to hell. Yeah. Like he's famously been talking in the last couple of days about soup as a weapon being used by Antifa. And he's talking about how awful soup is. It's worse than a brick. And he turns his back on, he basically gives the green light to
This is the other classic sort of, we're always the victims in this. So all violence is justified. Carrying guns around is justified. Yeah, it is absolute garbage.
And while I'm running hot on him, I'll just do one more on Trump before I go back to the general issue. The other thing that pissed me off was this is a tweet that most people didn't care about much, but to me, this said everything. Yeah. Which was a deleted tweet of, did you see this one, the black guy pushing the white woman on the train station?
This,
yes. Like on a train platform. Yeah. He tweeted out this retweeted the video of a black guy pushing a white woman, and the heading was Black Lives Matter /Antifa. Now, he knows that wasn't Black Lives Matter /Antifa because it happened in October last year, and he knows it didn't happen now because he's tweeted before. He tweeted back in June, and then he said, "Where are the protests for this? So terrible." Okay, so given that there's no evidence whatsoever this has anything to do with Black Lives Matter, it's just a random black guy pushing a random white girl. Why is he tweeting out this shit? For any reason other than racism. I can't possibly see any other reason. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know that. But there is no benefit of the doubt here at all.
He's President Facebook.
At the same time
another
as
thing,
defending the paintball guys.
Yes, yeah. Another just blatantly racist thing that he said this week was when, he's doing his shtick about, they're going to turn the suburbs into these, bring in the low-income housing. The implication is that it's going to be that this is going to cause chaos and violence. He said, and Cory Booker's going to be the housing and urban development. Why would you mention him other than the fact that he's black?
Yeah, well, especially given he has nothing to do with this at all.
Yeah, nothing to do with it whatsoever. It just, the first black guy who comes to mind is what they mention. And this was after the convention where they went to so much effort just finding every African-American supporter they could to robotically repeat, Trump's not a racist. Yeah. And I mean, that's another very made-for-Facebook event. This is, your children and nieces keep saying that Trump's a racist. Well, look, here's a video you can show them of an African-American person saying he's not a racist. So he was trying, and there's a definite strategy to that around Americans don't like to vote for somebody who is openly racist. And I think the convention probably did have the effect of there may have been 1 or 2% of Republicans who might have been wavering on Trump because they just thought he was too far beyond the pale. This is to reassure them. But yeah, when you look at what he is actually doing and what he's actually, saying.
What I should point out as well, now to go back to the general issue, what I should go back is that I should point out that this is based on nothing. In that there's this theory of this law and order's gone crazy thing. Yeah. Okay. Up to the end of July, in 26 major cities in America, murder is up 26% of the year. That is true. Violent crime is even.
Yes.
It's gone nowhere.
Yeah.
It's even. And property crime is down 7.7%. Even with everything being burnt to a crisp, apparently, property crime is down 7.7%. Okay, and it's also, the murders aren't just in Democrat cities.
No.
They're in Miami, they're in Jacksonville, they're in Republican cities as well. So that's the first bit of bullshit there. Now, look, there is definitely something going on in Portland. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. I'm not going to defend those guys, but it is in 6 blocks, and and part of the problem I feel is that it suits both the radical left and the radical right for them both to look as hardcore as possible. Because they're trying to impress and try to impress their fans. So both of them, like you said, there's this. If anyone did a wide angle lens on some of this shit, it would look pathetic. Yeah. Because it's all in this tiny little area. But everyone's doing close up shots to show the burning T-shirt in a building and stuff. And it's just so that's the second thing.
Sort of the opposite of your classic coronavirus beach shot.
Yes, that's right.
Where you use the telephoto lens.
That's right. The next thing is, and you've mentioned this, but I just want to put a bit more meat on these bones. The myopic focus on left.
Is this a remark about my arms, Chaz?
Now you mention it.
You know who we're talking to.
The myopic focus on the left wing is really starting to piss me off. I'm not a fan of Antifa.
I know that, Chaz.
You
yes.
know that.
Yeah.
But the suggestion that they are the biggest problem is just ridiculous. Okay, let's just quote his own Assistant Secretary at DHS for Counterterrorism Threat Prevention, who, yes, now she's a never-Trumper. But the reason she's a never-Trumper is because she was pissed off at the way Trump was acting about threats. So let's play what she has to say.
I find it hugely ironic that he now is happy to use the term domestic terrorism, which he refused to do last year after El Paso. But now he will use domestic terrorism with regards to Antifa, which I have to say, I worked for 3 years, received intelligence briefings every day. Never once was I told that Antifa was a grave national security threat. That doesn't mean they're not a problem. That doesn't mean that they don't have pose a risk in certain communities that local law enforcement need to focus on. But they weren't at that national level where we were concerned that they were going to cause widespread lethal violence against people, which is a threat when you look at historic data of the right-wing extremist movement. That is where we see the most people being killed. People with an anti-government or white nationalist viewpoint tend to be historically those that cause the most lethal attacks in our country.
Okay, so let's look at the numbers that she's talking about. I'll go right here. Here we go. This is a study in July. Since 2010, 21 left-wing murders, 117 right-wing murders, 95 jihadist murders since 2010. They're the numbers. One, until just now, just now, one Antifa death, they killed themselves. Yeah. Until just now. Now's the second one. Right? Okay, so the numbers are clear. Yes. So this whole thing is based on bullshit. And by the way, while I'm running hot, since when was Trump Mr. Police funding? He spent the last 4 budgets trying to cut police budgets. Yes. And he's trying to squeeze the hell out of the states who fund the police. If you don't, in the middle of a pandemic, allow the states to balance their budgets, they're going to cut the police to save money.
It's funny. This is a message that Biden has been trying to get across but he hasn't been able to get across.
He should get me to do this.
It just it doesn't. The words don't quite come out in the right order.
Poor old Biden.
But on this point, I mean, this is very important, and we've got idiots like Rand Paul saying, "Oh, why don't we go after the Antifa leaders like you would go after mafia leaders?" And I think didn't he even he demanded that the tax and travel records of Antifa be looked into. Now, I can understand why he's doing this, because Rand Paul, of course, was big within the Tea Party movement, which was basically entirely composed of self-enriching sham front organisations that were tax havens for the people who ran them. So it doesn't surprise me that he thinks Antifa is organised in the same way, but it isn't. But the other thing is this constant claim that they're making Biden is the tool of the radical left. That just doesn't hold up to any kind of scrutiny at all. Biden won his primary as a repudiation of the left,
of course,
of the Democratic Party, let alone to what was to the left of the Democratic Party, which is Antifa. On the other hand, Trump is absolutely a tool of the radical right. There is no way you can ever imagine Trump repudiating far-right supporters. He's not going to repudiate militia who go and kill people.
He hasn't done it for 2 days in a row yet. He does it one day, and then the day after, he then goes back every time. Yeah.
It's just like Trump's embrace of the radical right. That's a very real thing. Yeah, there's a complete asymmetry here, and people are just telling on themselves when they say the strategy is to make Biden seem like a tool of the radical left.
Don't tell you the worst thing about this whole thing.
Yeah, what's that?
I'm going to play you something which I'll tell you what it is before I play it. It's an ad for Tom Cotton, which is running in Wisconsin and Minnesota. He's beginning his 2024 campaign already off this shit. Now you guys will start to understand why I don't like Tom Cotton.
Over 80 days of riots, and the liberal mob is becoming more violent. Now they're coming for your homes. They're coming for your business, your job, and there's nowhere to hide. The violent mob wants Joe Biden to be president. Then no one will stand in their way. No one will be between your family and the mob. Don't let them win. Vote Republican.
I'm Tom Cotton, and I approve this message.
I love that he's just come straight over the top with the stupidest ad of the campaign season.
And once again, that is an ad made for the Republic of Facebook.
Tom Cotton.
Anyway.
Okay, before we move on, I'm just going to say that where you and I part, probably, because we agreed on everything so far, but where we probably part is one thing that gives me a bit of the shits about this. Actually, we might not part. Let's see. One thing that gives me shits about this is that these shootings are starting to become the essentially the Woodstock for looters, where every single time a shooting happens, you know that all the dregs from around the world, from around America, are going to find their way over there and to start burning shit, right? And like in Kenosha, 102 of the 175 people arrested were for interstate, right? Like from 44 different cities, diverse. That's nice. Anyway, but this is where we might disagree. They're not getting put away. And I like criminal justice reform, but if someone just over and over again is burning shit, put them in jail, for Christ's sake. Sure, first time, sure, but second time, third time, fourth time, like these dudes, like in Oregon, they're having this standoff at the moment, which is interesting to see where this goes, where the Oregon governor, Kate Brown, is trying to get the other police, the rural police, to come and help out in Portland. They're going, no. They're saying, no, we're not going to. And the reason why is because as soon as we arrest someone, you just let them go. Right? And it's actually true.
Who do they think they are? Cops? Think they can get back out on the streets immediately after killing someone?
They're suggesting, and this, I say, we might disagree. They're suggesting that it's unreasonable for them to put themselves in harm's way for no reason whatsoever. They're basically being. Like, they're involved in this play act with the dudes, like the violent left dudes.
Yeah.
and that might be fun for them, or not the cops for the violence, but people get hurt, both sides, and what's it for? Because no one's getting arrested. No, you're not stopping it. The next night you're going to meet them again, and you just go through it over and over again, and it's true that the local DA in Portland only sticks charges for assault or arson. If there's obstructing police, if there's whatever, he just lets them go as a general policy. And while, like I said, I don't like jailing people, but if it's a repeat offender, I think you got to start jailing them eventually. And the interesting thing about this is that the feds, what they've done here, I don't think I like this, but I don't like what the DA's doing in the first place. But the feds have deputized the state police now, so that the state police can start charging people with federal crimes, because the U.S. attorney has said, I'm going to charge anyone for anything. So like we're going to prosecute every charge. So now they're working around the local DA, the Portland DA, to prosecute people with federal crimes just so they go to jail. And the first people who've been charged with a federal crime by state police was like 2 days ago. So they might start cracking. I don't know what you think of all this, but personally, I do think that Tom Cotton's being a dickhead, but it's fair to say that by day 80, people can start going to jail. I would have thought. What do you reckon?
I have nothing to contribute to this.
That's fair enough. Okay. All right. Should we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about 2020. By the way, I've got news on Breonna Taylor and George Floyd another time. I don't want to spend forever on this. Actually.
Stats Nugget.
There are 210 miles of reinforced wall that have just been built by Donald Trump. Dr. Dave Smith.
No, there are not.
Oh, no, there are. 210 miles of reinforced wall. Reinforced wall, Dave. How much new wall has been built by Donald Trump?
Isn't it something like 5?
Bingo!
Yes!
Well done. Because you've done so well, let's go for another one. There have been 5 executions, Dr. Dave, under Donald Trump. 5 executions.
5 federal executions.
5 federal executions. How many executions have there been since Eisenhower otherwise? Before Donald Trump, how many executions were there since the presidency of Dwight Eisenhower?
6.
3, all of them under W.
So there was Timothy McVeigh. No, but Kennedy had someone executed.
3 in total, I'm saying. Oh, you're saying Kennedy, are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay, I'm not suggesting that you're.
No. I know you're not suggesting, but I could read a source that's wrong.
Wasn't Gary Gilmore executed in 1977?
Federal charges?
Yeah. It was like murder across state lines.
We'll have to get back onto that one.
I'll
look it up for you.
I think RFK might have, while Kennedy was president, I think RFK might. I know it's not that many, but.
Look in the comments on Facebook. I'll get back to you guys on that.
Okay. Yeah.
2020, Dave. Polling. Talk to me.
Okay. So after a real sort of wasteland period of polls where you could tell people were getting very, very anxious because there was so little sort of quality polling going on and garbage was filling the void. Finally, this week, the poll junkies got their hit, and they got a massive hit. In fact, it was an overdose of polls because all of the sort of live phone polling companies were waiting until after both conventions to conduct the polls. And there were also something that's been very unusual in this cycle, which was a large number of high-quality state polls as well. So where are we at after all of that?
Tell me.
Pretty much the same place that we were in about a month ago.
That's the impression I get.
And I mean, just a sort of reasonable indicator of that is when 538 launched its forecasting thing about a month ago, it was Biden winning 71 times. I think today it was Biden winning 71 times, or it oscillates between 70 and 71. Okay, so what's going on? In the national polls, it's showing on average between 7 and 8 point lead to Biden, which is down about 1 point on the last month, about 2 points from 2 months ago. So it is narrowing slightly, but not at the moment to an extent that seems to endanger Biden's lead. And if you look at the underlying opinion things in that, you're just seeing very, very little movement on key issues at all. Where you have basically, it's about even how people perceive Trump on the economy.
Yes. 48.
Yeah, but once you get beyond that, he's basically disfavoured on every issue, including law and order, including racial issues, certainly on handling of the pandemic.
I'll give you the numbers. Quinnipiac's first likely voters poll of the year. So this is when it starts getting serious. 48 on the economy, like you said. On handling racial inequality, 58-36 to Biden. On handling coronavirus, Biden 56-40. On handling healthcare, Biden 55-41. On handling any crisis, Biden 53-43. By the way, while we're at it, with Quinnipiac, 58-38 saying the country is worse off than it was in 2016. Republicans are saying 84-15 the country's better off.
Yes.
Independents, though, are saying 60-36 it's worse off.
Oh, wow.
So there we go.
Yeah. Republicans just need to get more of them on Facebook. Okay, so, but of course, national polls are not what matter.
No.
Especially, Nate Silver posted this really alarming thing about, according to his forecast, what the chances were of Biden winning the Electoral College if he won by a certain percentage point. And so if he wins the popular vote by 1%, that means he's got a 6% chance of winning in the Electoral College. It's not until you get above 4% that you actually get into he's got an 85 to 90% chance of winning in the Electoral College. Okay, so in the state level polls, there was this slew of polls, most of which were fairly good for Biden. So he does seem to have a pretty substantial lead in Michigan and Wisconsin. But there were a couple of worrying ones for him. Yeah. So there was the Monmouth poll that showed him 4 points ahead in Pennsylvania, but only 1 point in a low turnout scenario.
Right. Yeah, and 6 weeks ago it was 7 points.
Yes, yeah. So that does suggest it was shrinking. Now, on the other hand, I think it was Quinnipiac in Pennsylvania showed him up by 8, but Monmouth is a very respected poll, albeit with a very small sample, only 400. But then there was Quinnipiac in Florida that showed Biden with a 3-point lead there, which is narrower than, although Florida really has had so little decent polling, but because it's had so little decent polling, I think Quinnipiac is basically it in terms of what we've got now. If Trump wins both Florida and Pennsylvania, it's very hard for Biden to win from that point. It's not impossible. No. So if he wins Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona, that actually takes him to 269. But then he's got to get something else. Now, that's not impossible, given that Fox News showed him up in North Carolina by 4, and then Monmouth showed him up in North Carolina by 2. So he might actually be in the lead in North Carolina.
I wouldn't forget Iowa either, for that matter.
Yeah, we can't forget Iowa, where COVID cases are spiking. Yeah. And, Arizona's really interesting because we have this Fox News poll showing him up by, is it 8? Biden up by 8 in Arizona, which is extraordinary. And there was another major poll, I think Quinnipiac also showed him, was it Quinnipiac or? No, Morning Consult. So Morning Consult, which is not in that same level of quality, but nonetheless is very consistent, said basically the race hasn't changed in any state except for Arizona, where they had shown Trump with a 4-point lead a month before, now showing Biden with an 8-point lead there. So that, and also whenever you look at the Senate race in Arizona, it seems to show a bigger and bigger gap between McSally and whoever her opponent is. I want to note a couple of places where there's been very little polling. Nevada. Yep. I think the last poll of any quality there was in May.
There's never polling in Nevada.
Yeah, Nevada's a strange place. If you want to follow Nevada politics, follow John Ralston.
Yes, he's very good.
But he's basically it. He's what you've got to rely on. There actually hadn't been anything out of Michigan for a while. Once again, garbage polls were beginning to fill the void. But Michigan, Biden does seem to have a fairly solid lead there. But one of the most remarkable things about all of these polls was, okay, so the Fox News polls in Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Arizona. For those of you who are wondering, Fox News is rated as quite highly.
It is.
As a pollster. It's not one of the highest levels, but it is rated quite highly. And they asked, that poll is taken entirely after Kenosha in Wisconsin. And they asked, who do you prefer on crime and policing? It was Biden 47% to 42%.
Yep, that's right. And in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what does this overall picture show us? There is quite a bit of uncertainty around. I keep thinking of how the 2018 election played out, where you did have all of these moves, all of these blue wave moves, but Florida and Ohio did show this. I think there is a sort of persistent bedrock of support for Trump that is reflected there. I think Florida is going to be extremely close. No one is going to be able to count on Florida. G. Elliott Morris, who's the Economist's forecaster, he made this point that in most models, in most forecasting models, if Biden wins Florida, he's basically got a 95% chance of winning the election.
If he wins Florida, he's home.
If he loses, it's 50% or less.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Go on.
I was going to say, well, first of all, just a random poll which I wanted to cite because it ties into what we said before. We're talking about the Quinnipiac poll.
Mm-hmm.
Who would make you feel more safe as president? Donald Trump gets 35% more safe, 50% less safe.
Yes.
Joe Biden gets 42% more safe, 40% less safe.
Mm-hmm.
So that, to me, is the biggest refutation of the Law and Order campaign you can come up with.
Absolutely.
Like it's even if people buy it, they're going to favour Biden.
Yes.
Because they think he makes them more safe. The second thing I was going to say is with Pennsylvania, I agree Pennsylvania is shaping up to be a critical stage.
Yes.
The reason I think it's quite close, leaving aside, Monmouth is a very highly rated poll on 538, but you're right, small sample size. The reason I think it's close is because I always look at the way the politicians behave to give you some idea of what their internal polls are telling them.
Yes, yeah.
Joe Biden is doing a lot of emphasising that he is not going to ban fracking at the moment.
Yes, yeah.
He has said that, I don't know, maybe 5 times in the last week and said it very strenuously. It's even in some of his ads. Fracking is a big deal in Pennsylvania. The fact he's now, unfortunately for Biden, he's on the record during the primary saying many times very anti-fracking things. And every time he did that, his team would come and clean up behind him afterwards and go, when he says that, what he means is no new fracking, but to maintain the fracking that exists, etc. But the actual quotes were not helpful for his cause.
No.
And definitely the Trump campaign is trying to get them out there. And Biden is trying to argue as hard as he can against it. The fact that they're making such a deal out of fracking suggests to me that both of them think Pennsylvania is a 50-50 scenario, essentially.
Yeah.
So, that is something that I'm looking out for personally. I'm keeping my eye on Pennsylvania. Skeptics Corner for you, Dave. This is a poll. I was just been trying to find where it was, but I can't find which poll it is. But 11.7% of Republicans and 10.5% of independents say they'd lie to pollsters, compared to 5.4% of Democrats. But are they telling that poll the truth?
Yeah. That strikes me as one of the most useless things I've ever heard in a poll.
More. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm setting up and then rebutting it. All the online and phone polls at the moment are basically the same.
Yes.
So if you're talking about shy Trumpers, then they're probably going to be more likely to be shy to people on the phone than they are to a computer.
Shy Trumper, there's never been any evidence for it anyway.
Well, it's interesting. On Wednesday, we spoke to...
a shy Trumper?
No, we didn't. We couldn't find one. Celine... Oh, my God. I can't believe I forgot her name. We just interviewed her. The Democrat pollster, Biden's ex-pollster.
Okay.
Anyway, she said she believes in the shy Trumper theory, but she thinks that Trafalgar have completely mismeasured it. She said she's measuring shy Trumpers as well, and Biden's still in the lead, which was interesting. But, anyway, but if the shy Trump voter theory is true, let me ask you this: why in 2016 did Trump overperform in red states and underperform in blue states? Because you would think the shy Trumpers would be in blue states.
Yes.
That's where they'd be shy.
That's evidence that it's bullshit.
Yeah.
There are so many other, I think, a lot of, okay, there certainly was this very important phenomenon in some state polls that they were just not detecting Trump supporters. Shy Trumper is like the least plausible explanation for that.
Yeah, it was
far more plausible
education.
That Trump was basically getting more people to vote for him than he was to getting them to answer polls, and a lot of that was to do with behavioural patterns of according to education.
Yeah, they weren't weighting education in polls. They weighted race, they weighted age, but they didn't weight education.
To put it very simply, non-college educated people are more likely to vote than they are to answer a poll. Very simple.
Yeah.
Shy Trumper theory, though, as I've said before, it's popular in the media because that's where you'll find a lot of the shy Trumpers. You know who else loves shy Trump theory?
Who's that?
Finance bros.
Yeah.
Right. This is why the betting markets are constantly, because they're like, there's just like so many people who support Trump, but like aren't allowed to say it. Like, I can't put on my Tinder profile that I'm a Trump supporter.
Is that your finance bro?
Yes, this is my finance bro.
Okay. I prefer your Sanders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. No, that's a good call.
Yeah.
One other Skeptics Corner.
Yeah.
Michael Moore.
Yeah.
Sorry to have, this is a quote from Michael Moore. Sorry to have to provide the reality check again, but when CNN polled registered voters in August in just the swing states, Biden and Trump were in a virtual tie. In Minnesota, it's 47-47. In Michigan, where Biden had a big lead, Trump has closed the gap to 4 points. Are you ready for a Trump victory? Do you find comfort in your certainty that there is no way Trump can win? Are you content with the trust you've placed in the DNC to pull this off? I'm warning you, almost 10 weeks in advance, the enthusiasm level for the 60 million in Trump's base is off the charts. For Joe, not so much. I'm not saying Trump can win. Trump can't win. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that Michael Moore said the same thing in 2012 and 2018.
It's a get out the vote. It's a get out the vote effort. That's all it is. Yeah. It's like, I can see what he's doing. It's a get out the, which, I mean, I think it
Fair
is
enough.
quite. This is why I think the Biden campaign themselves have often not very subtly emphasized bad polls. Because, they're trying to scare the shit out of donors as much as they can. And they're trying to make sure that nobody is complacent, which is,
that's what he does.
It's going to be very important.
Let me ask you, do you have anything to say about polls before we move on to the race in general?
No.
Let me ask you, do you think any of these Republicans endorsing Biden matter at all?
No.
Like you've got Jeff Flake and his 26 people who are even less well known than Jeff Flake.
Yeah.
You've got the Chamber of Commerce has been endorsing a bunch of Democrats. You've got Richard Spencer.
Yeah.
Let me quote Richard Spencer. I plan to vote for Biden and a straight Democratic ticket. It's not based on accelerationism or anything like that. The Liberals are clearly more competent people. Richard Spencer, for those who don't know, is a white supremacist. The guy who got punched in the head in 2017.
Yeah.
How pissed off would you be if you're Donald Trump? And after all the work you've been doing for white nationalists, they then vote for Joe Biden.
On the grounds of competence. No, I don't think it'll make a difference because we haven't seen any polls at all that suggest that more Republicans than usual are planning to vote for Biden. If anything, it's fewer. Now, on the one hand, though, that might be people basically disavowing Republican affiliation. But no, I don't think this is working. And as for little Michigan corner for today, Rick Snyder, who was elected governor of Michigan the year that I left. He was actually based in Ann Arbor. His name is mud in Michigan at the moment because of the Flint water crisis. So, I don't think that these endorsements are... I mean, I'm not suggesting that they're hurting, but, they're really fairly immaterial.
Okay. I should talk briefly about mail-in voting because it's always in the news. We got that thing about Trump saying people should vote twice.
Yes.
Do you want to
commit voting fraud in order to prove that voting fraud exists?
By the way, I know he's not going to get arrested, but you know he's actually breaking the law when he does that. Like I got the quote here. It shall be unlawful. This is North Carolina law for any person with intent to commit a fraud to register or vote at more than one precinct, or to induce another to do so in the same primary or election, or to vote illegally at any primary election. And that it is against the law to vote twice in North Carolina. So he is inducing another to do so. He's breaking the law. I know. Who cares? But
it's not even
he's breaking
it's
the
not
law.
even his worst act of law breaking, like in the last 2 weeks. But anyway,
I want to say a couple of things about mail-in voting, though. First of all, something which I was reading about, which is interesting, is that one of the reasons, and this is one of the reasons why the blue shift occurs so strongly after Election Day, is they generally count mail-in votes in the order in which they come in. And old people vote way early.
Yes.
And young people vote the last second.
Yes.
And so for that reason, whatever happens, the last votes they count are likely to be blue votes.
Get that ballot in the mail so you can get to Cracker Barrel for the early bird special.
So just for those who are watching on the night, just remember that. It's going there's always a blue shift at the end, always. The other thing is just the latest numbers. I did say this on the show, but just for those who don't watch it on the show, these are the latest numbers from Emerson about people's intentions of voting. Emerson has Biden up 49-47, so we're talking a close contest there.
Emerson's a highly rated pollster, but there are increasing questions about its methodology because of its use of MTurk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, I'll just tell you what they've got. For people who plan to vote in person on Election Day, Trump 57-37. For people who plan to vote in person early, Trump 50-49, so it's 50-50. For people who plan to vote by mail, Biden 67-28.
Yeah.
So that is so the blue shift is really
it's going to be very real.
And the other thing I want to say, and I'm going to keep on saying this because no one else is saying this. Remember the 14th of December. The 14th of December is the date. I want this stenciled in your head. The date when the Electoral College meets. If they haven't counted all the votes by the 14th of December, those votes are not going to be counted because it doesn't matter what a court says. It says in legislation, the Electoral College meets on the 14th of December. They can only change that if Congress decides to change that, which means they need to beat a filibuster, which means whoever is winning is not going to let that happen. So 14th of December, it is etched in stone. If they don't get that thing counted in 5 weeks, it will not be counted. So, and I say it to the young people who will vote at the last second. It'll be the last counted. Anyway, throw that out there.
You'll be the last counted, young people.
Another thing, this is just random mail voting things. Study I saw this week from Charles Stewart in the Harvard Data Science Review. Depending on the state in which a citizen is voting, the increased risk of having your vote lost from mail voting ranges from 3.5% to 4.9%. So, which is, as you know, this is my personal concern about mail voting, not fraud. You don't get your vote counted. Anyway, and I'll just say one other thing about this whole area, which is not gotten much attention. Something which might have a big impact is, did you hear about the NBA? What the players have done?
Yeah. Like
they said, okay, all these courts that we're not playing in.
Yes.
Let's turn these stadiums into voting centers.
Yeah. They should do the same thing with professional football stadiums as well.
It's a brilliant
idea. You know why? All of these places were built with public money.
Yes,
they should be used as public facilities. And yet they do make very good voting facilities because there's so much room. Yep. So, yes, absolutely.
Oh, by the way, something else I said on the show, but I'll say here just in case.
Yes.
You know that thing that Trump was saying about, about the voting twice thing, saying you need to go to the voting booth and just check if your mail-in vote has been registered or not. And if it hasn't been registered, then you vote. Like, that's what he was saying, right? He was saying, I'm not saying to vote twice. I'm saying just make sure that your vote's been registered. And if it hasn't, then vote. There are 14 states where by law they're not allowed to look at even the envelope of the mail-in vote until Election Day.
Wow.
So for those 14 states, it is impossible.
Not allowed to look at the envelope.
No.
So when the second mail arrives, does someone have to be blindfolded?
That's right. It's like a children's party.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, like, and those, by the way, two of those states are Michigan and Pennsylvania.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So literally, it is impossible in those states for anyone to know whether you have voted by mail on the day of the election. They want, even if it's a perfect system. So let's just flag that. Do you have anything else to say about the race 2020? Do you want to talk about the stupid stroke thing, or is there anything?
Yeah, I just want to say. So I'm pretty.
I want to fact check that.
I'm pretty addicted to US political news to the detriment of my mental health. I had never heard the rumor that Trump went to Walter Reed Hospital with a series of mini strokes.
Oh, right, okay.
Had you heard it?
I had heard it, yes. Yeah.
Okay, you're a little bit more hardcore than I am.
I'm more into the internet, probably.
Right, yeah.
That's where these rumors live.
So you're like 98th percentile. I'm 95th percentile, and I had not heard it. And I only heard it when Trump said it.
Yes.
Now, okay, this is bad political communication. Right. In the 2000s, a very good, very important political scientist called Brendon did all this experimental research that found that you don't negate a message by repeating it with a negation. Okay, a classic example of this is when there were rumors in 2007 and 2008 that Obama is a Muslim. Not that the rumors ever went away, but the way that his campaign initially dealt with that is by kept saying Obama is not a Muslim. All the people here is Obama Muslim.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, when Trump says, no, I did not go to Walter Reed Medical Hospital with a series of mini strokes.
Yes.
When he says that multiple, it was at his rally in Pennsylvania, he was saying, and they keep saying that I went to Walter Reed Medical Hospital with a series of mini strokes. Now,
poor messaging.
This is this is his grievance politics. Like, how dare they say this? But he keeps repeating, I went to Walter Reed Hospital with a series of mini strokes. The fact that he says I didn't in front of it is immaterial to the political messaging. So anyway, obviously shocked to know that Trump is not keeping up with the political communications literature, probably because it's paywalled.
Yes. That's exactly the thing I wanted to fact check, actually, because it's not the only one. A lot of people were saying, like Rachel Maddow was saying as well, going, no one accused him of mini strokes. He's brought up himself out of nowhere. Why is he mentioning mini strokes when no one else has accused him of that? Well, I just
can't believe she used to be taken really seriously.
Don't even get me started.
Yeah.
I've had so many battles with the commenters on
liked it. Yeah. Anyway,
I just want to find one example just to prove my point. August the 1st, author Don Winslow, 25,000 likes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the benefits of making videos that garner 5 million plus views is that you hear from a lot of people, including whistleblowers inside Trump administration. I've received 3 communications saying that during his term, Trump has suffered a series of mini strokes. Okay, so just fact. It's been mentioned. But you're right. He's an idiot the way he's dealing with it.
25,000 in the scheme of things, that's not a huge, but like that doesn't indicate anything that's breaking out of a bubble.
Sure.
25,000, that can be,
I was saying it's out there.
Yeah.
He didn't make it up.
This actually brings me to something else that I wanted to note, which is there's been more and more talk, which is accurate, about Russian misinformation efforts. And there's this big thing, like, Russia is trying to undermine Americans' faith in the electoral system. And there was something that came out this week about how Russia set up some sham left-wing publication.
That's right.
But before it was removed, it's like they wrote these articles and distributed them that had 14,000 engagements online. Now, okay, I don't doubt that this is happening. But every day, Trump is openly undermining people's faith in the electoral system. That's actually a campaign strategy.
Yeah.
Like
14,000 engagements. That's Planet America.
14.
Don't want to piss on my own show.
Yeah. It's, Trump will say something like it'll get 877,000 likes on Twitter, and then millions of engagements on Facebook. So I'm not denying that this is a problem, but I'm just saying I don't know if the Russians should even be bothering directing resources to this when the Americans are doing such a good job of it.
Okay, I want to get on to COVID because we've been putting this off for such a long time.
How much time we got left?
We got about 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
So I'm not going to get through all of it, but at least I'll start COVID.
Okay.
Which will be nice.
Yes.
Sorry, we'll get to Jerry Falwell another time. I know you're keen.
Oh, Jerry Falwell isn't going anywhere.
Okay. Sadly. Okay, all right. We've got so many things I'm trying to squeeze in here. So, okay. So first of all, I'm not going to go through all the case numbers like I did on the show, but I will just note for you guys who are a bit hardcore, something that I found when I was looking through the case numbers, which I didn't know until now. Arizona, Ohio, Michigan, and Virginia include probable cases in their official COVID case numbers. So they're slightly inflated.
Whoa.
Should be aware of that. Secondly, this was a wild stats from 2 weeks ago now, but I still think it holds up. This is how bad America is. Since July 1, up to 2 weeks ago, 69% of all new cases and 75% of all deaths recorded anywhere in the rich world, it's like not Brazil, came in the US. And that accounts for 27% of the group's population. America passed Sweden today on per capita deaths.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's about to pass the other European countries, Italy, Spain, and UK. Belgium's still a bit ahead. But it just so happens there's been a bit of talk on Sweden recently. A supposed Sweden comeback.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I just want to just flag a couple of things. It is true that Sweden's economy shrank 8.6% in the second quarter compared to the European Union average of 11.9%. Spain, 18.5%. France, 13.8%. Italy, 12.4%. But Sweden's unemployment rate rose to 9.8% in June. The European Union's overall unemployment rate was 7.1%. Sweden's neighbours, Denmark, 5.5%, Norway, 4.6%, Finland, 7.9%.
Yeah.
So much for Sweden.
So much for Sweden.
Something which you haven't
Take
talked
your
about.
meatballs and shove them.
Sorry to just race through here, but just so much. Something which you haven't talked about because I couldn't get good data was about the HHS, the health
and Human Services.
Health and Human Services, thank you. Taking data collection away from the CDC and giving it to a private industry.
Yeah, that's fucked.
They gave up.
No, excellent.
They've given it back to the CDC.
Excellent.
They've fucked up that much.
The glory of private enterprise. Amazing.
So there's that. My favourite poll, which is a random poll, which I just love.
Yeah.
From CNN. Fake news. 68% say the US response to the coronavirus outbreak makes them feel personally embarrassed. 68%.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but that is
it's a good poll, isn't it?
Funny.
Yeah. Yeah, just throw shit in. Go for it.
Okay, first of all, I just want to mention the monumental failures of American universities.
Yes, go for it. Yeah.
Which this is just awful to watch, and it's one of these things that shows you that the countrywide failure is not just at the top. So a lot of universities reopened. Some quite sensibly decided not to actually physically bring students back, but plenty of others did. And all of them on the proviso that, we can get our students to behave in ways that won't spread the coronavirus. No, you can't. You just can't. Take it from me as an academic. You can't. And as someone very familiar with the American university system, where tuition is often very expensive, and the way that it's sold to students is this is a lifestyle. This is an experience. You're not going to then be able to tell students, but you've got to live as if you're living in a 1950s Bible college. Right. It's just not going to, it was ridiculous. When they brought them back in the first place, they're sending the signal, this isn't a serious problem. And then they act all shocked. Students had a keg party last night. We expect them to act like grown-ups.
Dr. Dave, do your students give you wedgies? Is this what this is about?
No, because I'm teaching them online.
Fair enough.
Can't give a wedgie online.
Go on.
Anyway, no, the thing is, I've got a lot of sympathy with, especially incoming students who they didn't get to go nuts in their senior year of high school like you're supposed to as well. Like, of course, if they've got the opportunity, they're going to flout the rules.
I played a lot of ping pong.
Yeah. And like this should be, something that the president of a university really should be able to predict. assuming that they have any knowledge at all of how students behave.
Dave, he's too busy watching his wife have sex with a student. Sorry, we're not talking about Falwell. Keep on going.
Anyway, because it's harrowing what you said. Like every day I see some other random college has 100 new cases. There are 6 universities that have had 1,000 cases since reopening. The state of Missouri, so 6 million people, roughly the same size as Victoria. Since colleges reopened 2.5 weeks ago, 7,000 college students have tested positive.
Wow.
To coronavirus.
Okay.
It is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is an utter failure, and especially as presidents of universities, there's always all this bullshit about leadership. Like, you know, we're in this position because we're great leaders. There's just no leadership, no vision, nothing being shown. And the really worrying thing about this is that when they shut the campus down, as they inevitably have to, you know, we're going to have online classes now for at least another 4 weeks, they send the students home, back to their communities.
Yeah.
To bring it back. Now, this coupled with a testing regime which is an absolute embarrassment. Like, I was speaking to a friend in the US the other day. He was saying, you know, where he is, he's told the standard waiting time is 7 to 10 days.
I've seen 22 days.
For a result, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's in one of the better places. And he had to get a referral from a hospital to get a test. Despite the fact he'd been exposed to someone who was a suspected coronavirus case. It's just, so, I mean, I don't know if this is going to lead to another wave, school and college reopenings, but it's certainly not helping the situation at all. Yeah.
Especially given, to quote Game of Thrones, winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Okay, a couple of sort of studies based on youths and children and so forth, which I found interesting. This is a CDC study from late June. 25.5% of young Americans aged 18 to 24 have seriously considered killing themselves during the last month, according to the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly report from CDC. A quarter of young Americans seriously considered killing themselves during basically June.
Wow.
And as a point of comparison, you might go, oh, are they always trying to top themselves? No. In 2018, 11% of 18 to 25-year-olds said they'd seriously considered suicide in the past year, as opposed to past month. It was 10.7% across the whole survey. So we're talking young Americans in particular struggling, obviously, with COVID. But it's not just that. It's also we already knew about the discriminatory nature of COVID. Black children are hospitalised and die of COVID at 5 times the rate of white children, but wait for it, Hispanic children are hospitalised at 8 times the rate. It's actually, I cited some other numbers on the show today. Hispanics seem to be more affected than anyone. Asian Americans are affected more than black Americans as well, actually. Anyway, I'll skip the city things. Testing. Let's talk about testing because one of the things that which is interesting is that it's weird because the testing regimes they have are fucked up in a lot of ways. One is that it takes forever, but part of the reason why it takes forever is because it's way more involved than it need be. Like there was a study that came out this week. 40 to 90% of the people who test positive under a PCR test may no longer be contagious. Yeah. Because it's so sensitive. Like it just finds just the tiniest little bit. But you don't need to find the tiniest little bit. You just need to stop this person spreading to everyone else. All right. And so, a question people ask about pool testing, because we were talking about pool testing months ago. Where's the pool testing gone? The answer is America has too high a positivity rate to do pool testing. Because it only works pool testing if you only have one in a blue moon. If everyone's got it, then there's no point because you just need to test everyone anyway. And according to the CDC, the pool test they run, they say that they'd question it when the prevalence goes above 2%. and the prevalence in America is well above 2%. Although it is getting lower than you would think. It's down to like 5.5 now. So maybe they'll start doing pool testing now soon. But the good news is that the FDA has granted a bunch of emergency use authorizations in the last few weeks. A 15-minute test from Abbott that is 97% accurate and runs like a pregnancy test.
Okay.
So that's nice. Costs $5. Abbott's producing 50 million tests as of October every month.
Okay.
The federal government's already bought 150 million of them, and they can distribute them to nursing homes, schools, and other areas of populations at high risk. So that is good.
That's good.
The FDA has also issued a emergency use authorization for a saliva-based test. Also requires no lab work. It's at it costs $4.
So it just turns blue or something.
I think
Yeah.
It's and it's so that's coming out as well. So hopefully in the next month or so, these testing issues will go away. Another just random thing. There's a bit of a problem. It's something that's making people. I'm going to leave the vaccines.
I don't think they will go away. They will find some way to fuck this up.
They probably will. Probably will. I'm going to leave the vaccines thing because we're running out of time. We'll come back to vaccines next time. But what I will say is I just want to flag something that is important to vaccines and everything. It's not getting as much coverage as it should. Reinfections. Because the whole point of vaccines is that you're not going to get reinfected once you've got the antibodies or the T cells or whatever they're trying to build up. There's a Hong Kong man who's been confirmed tested positive twice with 2 different strands, but the strands might be so different. It doesn't matter. And the second time he wasn't very symptomatic. So they said, that's how immunity works. You become more used to it. And Nevada man this week had a second reinfection, which was much, much worse.
Oh.
And so people are getting a little bit nervous about this. So you just want to put a watch on that. I want to tell you what. Don't do the. Oh yeah, I tell you what. Sorry, I'm just racing through things here. One thing which is very topical, which we should talk about very briefly, is the rental. The rental order from the Trump administration, which I talked about at length on the show, and I just said I brushed past the illegal bit and I talk about it on the podcast. But just essentially, Trump, the CDC has said, because they're dealing with anything that might spread pandemics in any way, shape, or form, that people being evicted can spread pandemics because then they have to move in with someone else. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, and so they're saying, okay, we're going to use that power to have no more evictions till after the election. Okay. Now I want to. Well, first of all, what do you think of that?
I think landlords are going to say, "Fuck that! No, I'm just going to go ahead and evict."
Well, they're facing $100,000 fine and a year's jail.
I reckon they're going to take that gamble.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. Okay. Well, the thing for me, I don't think it's going to be found legal myself.
Yeah. I think that's what they're going to be. That's what they're going to be betting on. Also, got to bear in mind, a lot of landlords in the US own huge numbers of properties. One of the reasons why the University of Michigan brought students back, it is speculated by their paper, the Michigan Daily, was that Ron Weiser is on the board of regents, who's Ann Arbor's biggest slumlord, who would have stood to lose millions of dollars if students hadn't come back to occupy his shitty properties. So, for some landlords, $100,000 fine.
Fair call.
Don't give a fuck.
Fair call. By the way, what I would like, I don't want it to be too partisan here, but I would like some conservatives or some Republicans to concede that this is more socialist than anything that Joe Biden's ever proposed, and most of the things that Bernie Sanders has proposed. This is super, super socialist to just say, okay, you know what? I don't give a shit about the rent you're paying. You're supposed to pay to your landlords. They just can't evict you. We're just going to go in. We're gonna interfere in a private contract. This is not a government. This is not a government loan or anything like that. This is just you conducted the business, and we're going to tell one side that they can't enforce their contract. Tough titties. That's a very, very, very left-wing thing to do.
Yeah, I agree with it completely. I just think landlords are going to flounder.
No. Yeah, I'm not saying you're not, but I would like some Republicans to concede that rather than just going, yeah, let's go Trump. Yeah,
and I'd like to see unicorns flying around your laptop, but yeah.
But I just want to say why that the Republicans better hope it is illegal. And I'll tell you why. Because you know what? You know what you can use that principle for? If the principle is that the CDC can go around Congress and just do whatever they like, as long as it's stopping pandemics and diseases spread.
Yeah.
Do you know something that causes diseases? Global warming.
Yeah.
Global warming causes diseases, mosquitoes and tropical diseases and all the rest of it. That would give the CDC a license to do whatever the hell they like.
This is rapidly becoming my favourite thing of the Trump administration.
Or setting up future Democrat administrations.
Yeah. This is great. Awesome. Anyway, I think that we're out of time.
We are out of time. Thank you very much, Peppers. And the hand of God is just about better. So things are going to improve around
By the way, this is the first show that we've ever done with just the two of us in the room.
Yeah.
No adults in the room.
Kind of romantic.
Yep. Anyway, have a good weekend.
Bye.